I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We continue with the Gospel. Christ has been in his Galilean ministry, his first Galilean ministry. Number of months, traveling all around, many miracles, healing many people. But then a new feast arises, which I believe to be the Feast of Tabernacles, which is in the 7th month, maybe 6 months after the Passover. And he goes back down to Jerusalem, where he heals a man on the Sabbath, and the Jews get all mad at him. And the last thing we read was his great discourse about who he is, identifying himself and the power and authority that he has been given by the Father, and the mission that he has been given, his work on the earth. And he invokes his 4 witnesses, his testimony, John the Baptist's testimony, the testimony of all former prophets as recorded in Scriptures, and his own works, the miracles that he does. That testimony is what we read last. Now, we are going to turn to the Joseph Smith translation. This is John chapter 5, and we are going to look at the Joseph Smith translation of verses 17 through 47. Now the first one, most of these are again minor grammatical updates. The first one we see is in verse 18 where it shifts the word had. So in the King James, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, in the Joseph Smith translation, because he had not only broken the Sabbath. Slight modification makes it flow just a little bit better, but no change in meaning. In verse 23, we change that and which to who. We also take out the word man at the beginning there, so that all men should honor the Son, it's rather just that all should honor the Son. In verse 24, again, we're just changing that to who, and we change at the end there, unto life, change it to into life. In verse 25, near the end again, we have, instead of they that here shall live, it is corrected to they who here shall live. And again in verse 28, in the which all that are in the graves is changed to in the which all who are in their graves. Now, that is a somewhat significant change. It's not just in the graves, but in their graves. This is talking about now individuals, not just a nameless, kind of formless mass of they, but this is now individual graves, those who are in their graves, clearly indicating the dead. This is, which I didn't mention in my last video, but this is Christ talking about his mission to preach to the dead, which he will do between his death and resurrection when he goes into the world of spirits. This is Christ prophesying that. He is telling that this is part of his mission, part of his work. Now, verses 29 and 30 and 31 all have significant changes. Let's reread these in the King James and then in the Joseph Smith. So in the King James, these 3 verses state, and shall come forth they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. I can of mine own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. But we have this instead in the Joseph Smith translation. And shall come forth they who have done good in the resurrection of the just, and they who have done evil in the resurrection of the unjust, and shall all be judged of the Son of Man. For as I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just. For I can of my own self do nothing, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father who hath sent me. Therefore, if I bear witness of myself, yet my witness is true. Now remember, in the King James it says, if I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. But that's not what Christ is saying. Christ is saying, even though it's me bearing witness, my witness is true. I tell the truth. And then after he makes the statement, he calls on the other witnesses. He lists 3 other witnesses. And after this, he invokes the other witnesses of himself, saying, my witness is true, but you don't have to just take my word for it. I have other witnesses to support my witness. But then note also his reference to the resurrection. Rather than just being a resurrection of life or death, it is now parsed out. The resurrection of the just and the resurrection of the unjust. The first and the second resurrection. Instead of all just being resurrected. The way it was before, it's more one resurrection. Everybody gets resurrected, and the good get resurrected to life, and the bad to the evil to damnation. But this is saying, no, there's 2 different resurrections. Very interesting changes here. Very corrections. Well, let us look here now, verse 3 in the King James. Ye sent unto John, and he bare witness unto the truth. In Joseph Smith's translation, it adds the word also, and he bare witness also unto the truth. Saying John the Baptist is another witness. Now, verse 34 also has significant corrections or additions, things being restored back in. So the King James says, But I receive not testimony from man, but these things I say, that ye might be saved. Joseph Smith has this. And he received not his testimony of man, but of God. And ye yourselves say that he is a prophet, therefore ye ought to receive his testimony. These things I say, that ye might be saved. So John's testimony did not come by man. It came by God. And as the Jews accepted John as a prophet, they should also accept Christ. That's what you reject his testimony. You say he was a prophet, but you reject his testimony. Makes no sense. But we continue on. Verse 35, he was a burning and a shining light. But we just take out the word and, a burning and shining light. In verse 36, but it says, But I have greater witness than that of John. That's the King James. In the Joseph Smith translation, but I have a greater witness than the testimony of John. And this is where he goes on to talk about his own works. And so he's saying that you seeing what I'm doing, that should be enough to prove that I'm telling the truth. Verse 37 and 38, let's read these together because they're kind of significant. And the Father himself, which hath sent me, hath borne witness of me. Ye have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his shape, and ye have not his word abiding in you, for whom he hath sent him ye believe not. Joseph Smith corrects this. And the Father himself, who sent me, hath borne witness of me. And verily I testify unto you, that ye have never heard his voice at any time, nor seen his shape, for you have not his word abiding in you, and him whom he hath sent ye believe not. But as Christ says, they have not seen or heard the Father, because they do not have the faith. They do not believe the testimony of the Father. But let us read the last three that have a correction to them are verses 44, 45, and 46. So we're going to read these all together. How can ye believe, which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that cometh from God only? Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuseth you, even Moses, in whom ye trust. For had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me. That was the King James. This is the Joseph Smith translation. How can ye believe, who seek honor one of another, and seek not the honor which cometh from God only? Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is Moses who accuseth you, in whom ye trust. For had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me. See, the Jews, they had the law. They had the words of Moses, and they thought that as long as they were keeping the law, they were good. They didn't need anything else. Their faith was in the law. Their faith wasn't in God. And that's what Christ is saying here. You are seeking the honor of the world. You are seeking the honor of those around you by adhering to this law so strictly that you don't perceive who gave the law. You don't understand the words of Moses. You claim you are following Moses, but if you were following Moses, you believe me, because Moses testified of me. But they're not following Moses. They are making an idol of the law. Anyways, we leave that here, and I believe I'm turning to Matthew next, so I will see you there.